Hi, my name's Phil and a warm welcome to Festool TV. So today I'd like to give you some information on working with the HK85 and also with working with the HK85 with large section timbers for construction or also those that are used in joinery workshops as well. So along here we have some glue laminate and this can be used in the construction area for the roof, for example, but these will always need to be cut to length. So I could work along, I can measure everything out and then I can use a pencil line to work with. The disadvantage of this is that then I need to square the timber over accurately and it involves another way of working. But the big advantage with the HK85 is that I can connect this to the FSK guide rail system. And now because these two are paired up together, I can cut my timber to length just with a single pencil mark, and then along here we have a guide and then the timber can be cut. So I can now place the FSK guide rail on the length that I need to cut the timber to, and now we can make our cut. The big advantage of working with the FSK and the HK85 is that the cut is not only 90 degrees across, but we're also down in this angle, down here as well is perfect. The big advantage again is that with the FSK guide rail along here we have a movable stop. So I can set this to say 38 degrees. So this example could be for cutting a common rafter. So I can do my plumb cut, for example. And on the underside here there's a permanent stop. So now I can take the HK85, put it onto the edge of the timber, bring this forward, and now this angle is at 38 degrees. So now we can make the cut. So working with the HK85 and the FSK guide rail system, it means we can make quick, easy, fast cuts. And the big advantages, of course, is speed. But with the HK85, we can also adapt the machine for a different type of application. When working with larger section timbers, there's quite often a need to either run a trench, a rebate, or a groove in the timber. And this is where the HK85 can be adapted to suit those types of applications. So the next stage is to show you how we can set the machine up and also how we can work with this rebate and grooving block. So this is a grooving block that we can fit to the HK85. And this grooving block will go from 16 millimeters to a maximum width of 25 millimeters. So if we take this center washer away, we can then bring these two components away from each other. And on the inside here was a series of washers. And with these washers, I can add or I can take away the individual washers, which means I can open up this block according to the groove width that I need to make. So as a minimum thickness or the minimum width of this is at 18 millimeters, on here I can look for the 2 millimeter washer, and all of the washers have the marking on top to show which size they are. So when I put this washer on in between the two halves and we bring these two together, I can now cut a groove of 18 millimeters. Once that's been set up, I can then ensure that all of these washers are put back on to the outside of the block. And we can then put the centre spindle back in. And so now this block can be fitted onto the HK85 to cut a groove or a trench at 18 millimeters in width. It's important that all of these washers go back onto the block when using it. So for the example that I show, we'll set the block up so we can put all of the washers in between the two halves of the cutters. And then the advantage of showing you this is also to show you the torque and the power that the machine has to cut this type of groove. So we can take the two halves away, and now these washers can be added in, put onto these two studs, and then we can fit this into position. So when the block is like this, it's good to give you some information on these small knives that do the work for us. Each of these edges has a number on, so 1, 2, 3 and 4. And it means that when an edge has lost its sharpness, we can then turn these around. So each of these knives will have 4 cutting edges that can be used. And to ensure we're always using the optimum edge, they're numbered. So all we need to do is to swap these around as and when there's a need to have a fresh edge onto the block. So the next stage is to show you how we can fit this onto the HK85. And with the HK85 we can use fast fix. This lever can come forward and we can then take out the Allen key from the storage position. First off, we need to remove this blade, and then we can take the centre nut away, or the centre collar. We can then bring back the pendulum cover, and then we can lift this out. In here, there's a small there's a washer, and we need to remove this before the block goes on into position. It's important to note that when we're working with this type of grooving block, the guarding has to be in position and fitted in the correct order. So we have 2 halves for the guard. We have a top section and the bottom section. The bottom section will always be fitted first. And with these 2 cutouts here, or these 2 elongated sections, we can then fit the guarding into position. And then we can just tighten these up into place. And with this top guard, these 2 small edges here need to be tucked into the small openings on the right-hand side and also on the left-hand side as well. And that's the small position there. And then we can just do up the 2 screws. And then the next stage after this is that we can then fit the cutter block onto the HK85. There's 2 small flats on this side here, and all we need to do is to match them up with the 2 flats on the spindle, and then the block will go into position. We can pull the pendulum cover back. We can get the cutter in the right position. And then we can put it into place. Bring the pendulum cover back, and then of course with the Allen key we can then tighten the centre spindle. So Allen key back into the handle, and then we can lock over the fast fix handle. So just put these other components to one side. Because we've changed the tooling that's on the machine from a blade through to a cutter block, this is of course going to affect the height or the depth adjustment of the machine. But I can work out exactly the depth of cut that I need to make, because on here we have 2 symbols. One is for the grooving block, which I've just fitted to the machine, and the other one is for the saw blade. So if I set the machine to, for example, 70 millimeters, so I can set this to that position, and this is on the FS because we need to make sure we use this with the guide rail system. I then look on the scale here, and I'm going to be cutting a groove at 20 millimeters. So the machine is set to 70, but if I look at this little conversion chart, it then means that I'm going to be cutting a groove at 20 millimeters in depth. So with this grooving block, we can cut grooves or rebates 16 millimeters minimum to a maximum width of 25 millimeters. But our maximum depth of cut is at 35. So you can see the wide range of applications that we can use this type of cutter block for, and how a saw, a HK85, can be adapted for different types of work. But what's even better is that we can now take the HK85 and we can attach this to the FSK guide rail system. I can mark out along my piece of timber where I need to put my groove, and then we can make the cut. Normally extraction would go on the rear, but when working with this type of block, I can put my extraction hose onto the front of the machine. And because of the volume of material that this cutter block can remove, then working with the 36 millimeter hose is always the best choice. But when this is being set up, we can work always within the Festool system, from changing the block, for the Allen key being stored on the machine, and also for fitting the two guard covers. So we don't need anything else from anywhere. We can always work within the Festool system. So now, like I said, we can work out where we need to make the groove, and then we can switch the machine on, and we can put a groove in this position with the HK85 and also the FSK guide rail system. So I can put this back down to 0 position, or 90 degrees. And now we're ready to make the cut. So, as you can see, working with the FSK guide rail system, the HK85, and this fantastic rebating and grooving block means that a saw can be used for many different types of applications within the Festool range. So, I hope this has helped your understanding of working in this way, and I'll see you again on the next presentation. Thank you.